This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Nikki Giovanni is our guest, the poet, the distinguished professor of English at Virginia Tech. Her new book is called Chasing Utopia, a Hybrid. Why a hybrid?
Because I have stories and I have poetry in it. And Rachel and I argued about this, my editor, because it was Chasing Utopia, the hybrid. And Rachel said, Nikki, it can't be the hybrid. And I said, why? And she said, because there are other hybrids. I said, but they're not other hybrids chasing utopia. But I lost.
Now, wait, you have a tattoo on your arm?
I do.
What does it say?
It says Thug Life.
Thug Life?
Yes.
Why?
Because the assassination of Tupac Shakur. And I didn't know Tupac, and I don't know if any, but his mother. But I wanted them to know that I cared, that it hurt all of us. This was not just an individual thing. This was a generational. Tupac was a great loss, just an incredibly great loss. A great mind, charismatic young man, and only actually 2 years younger than my son. So, you know, you feel it a lot. Yeah.
Share some poetry.
The significance of poetry. Poetry is as necessary to life as salt is to stew, as garlic is to pasta, as perfume is to summer nights, as shaving lotion is to mornings, as your smile is to my happiness. Poetry is as significant to life as yeast is to bread, as butter is to toast, as grapes are to wine, as sugar is to lemons. How else will we get lemonade? Poetry is to me your voice, your touch, your laughter, that feeling at the end of the day that I am not alone. I like that. I like that a lot.
Can you read spices?
Oh, I love spices. I used to watch my mother cook. She would invariably sigh that little sigh, then light a cigarette. Since no one smokes anymore, beans have not tasted as good. I have her sigh and stack of spices. This one is cardamom. It comes from Southeast Asia. This one is nutmeg. The defense of this spice by a Brit was so fierce, the World Court heard the case, and the Dutch gave up Manhattan Island for that little island in the Indian Ocean that grew nutmegs and cloves. Stick them in an orange for a Christmas present or a ham to make a design. Cooking with Mommy was geography. These pansies you can eat. These mushrooms will kill you. Should we put them in your father's egg, she'd laugh and say. The green things, rosemary, thyme, tarragon, cilantro. The fennel we grew brought mean yellow jackets, so we get that at Kroger's. The trick to a great ham is a song, she would say, and we would sing loud and lustily, she harmonizing with me, but me unable to carry a straight melody. Now it's ready. Cold water almost to the top, fennel, allspice, pepper pods of all colors, no salt. It's a rule. Green spices till it looks right, then cinnamon on the uncovered top. Low heat until boiling, about 2 hours. Let cool 15 minutes. Pour the water off, then let cool on your platter. I make my ham the way my mother made hers, with lots of talk and love and laughter.
Nikki Giovanni reading Spices, one of her poems in Chasing Utopia, a hybrid of prose and poetry.
And a lot of recipes, as you could see.
Yeah,
It's a lot of cooking.
Poetry,
yeah.
Joy.
Yeah.
So when do you write poetry? When do you write prose?
I think that essentially the story makes a decision. For Chasing Utopia, which is the lead here, could never have been a poem, because it's a whole process of why I decided that I wanted to drink the #1 beer in the world. And I mean, I'd have to end up writing, you know, Paradise Lost or something. It would just go on forever if I was trying to do that as a poem, and I don't think I have that ability because I'm a storyteller, and the way I tell stories is through that voice. And so this I dealt with through just a story. You know, this is how I got to it. We lost Mommy, and I just wanted to, but we didn't lose Mommy. Mommy died, and I wanted to celebrate. You don't forget the death of your mother. I mean, that's just not going to happen. But at some point, you do have to sort of say, you know, now, are you embarrassing your mother by continuing to stay in this place? I think that Americans need to, I think we as a nation need to recognize and respect mourning more, you know, because it's not something to get over. Death and illness and things are not things you get over. But you do have to say, okay, I have cried this last year. I need to try to recreate. Life becomes different. I have to recreate myself.
How did you start writing poetry?
I just think, basically, I laugh about it, but my sister was a very friendly person. She had friends, and I'm just not friendly, and I didn't have a lot of people around me. I don't have a lot of people that I talk to. And so I think I just started writing. I used to draw, but I was not as good at drawing, obviously, as I am at writing, and I like words. But I've spent a lot of time alone, and I lived with my grandparents for several years, and Grandpapa was 20 years older than Grandmother. So Grandpapa really didn't have a lot of patience with the grandchildren. I mean, he was a very nice man, and I don't know a nicer human being, actually, than my grandfather. But all of the other grandchildren sort of paired off. My cousins went off and climbed trees or whatever it is boys do, and my sister was talented also, and so she was not only friendly, but she had piano lessons, she had dance lessons, and they just left Nikki, you know. And so Grandpapa would talk to me, and we would read together. He was a Latin scholar, so he taught me the Greek and Latin gods, and you know, we had all of the mythology. You know, I think the Grandpapa felt sorry for me, so I learned to function in my own space, and I'm still pretty comfortable with that.
As we wrap up, Nikki Giovanni, this is the weekend that Nelson Mandela was laid to rest in his home village, Qunu. Any thoughts on this world leader?
Well, you know, Mandela was a great man. I'm a member of Delta Sigma Theta sorority, as is Winnie Mandela, and she is our sorority sister. So when this transition did occur, my thought immediately went out to my sorority sister, because I think that of all of the things that Nelson Mandela gave up, and I think he gave up quite a bit to help South Africa, the main thing that we ignore that he gave up was Winnie. And we have to recognize that Winnie Mandela carried on all of those years. And then when he came out, there was going to have to be a compromise. This is the politics of it. We know that. There's no way that Winnie, having run the ANC while he was in jail, there's no way she can be First Lady of South Africa. And so that had to be one of the most difficult decisions. I do not know Mr. Mandela. I did not know him. But that had to be one of the most difficult decisions to make, that the woman who had stood with you, you now have to put aside.
Well, Nikki Giovanni, I want to thank you so much for being with us. Nikki Giovanni's latest book is called Chasing Utopia, a Hybrid. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report, as we end today's show on Nelson Mandela, turning to the anti-apartheid activist Ahmed Kathrada, who was imprisoned at Robben Island with Mandela. He was imprisoned with Mandela for 26 years. He spoke at Sunday's funeral.
Today, mingled with our grief, is the enormous pride that one of our own has, during his lifetime and now in your death, united the people of South Africa and the entire world on a scale never before experienced in history. Remarkably, in these few last days, the masses of our people from whatever walk of life have demonstrated how very connected they feel to you, and how the story of your life is their story and how their story is yours. Mandela, you have captured this relationship beautifully on the occasion of the death of our father, Comrade Walter Sisulu. Quote, "We share the joy of the living and the pain. Together we shared ideas, forged common commitments. We walked side by side through the valley of death, nursing each other's bruises, holding each other up when our steps faltered. Together we savored the taste of freedom," unquote.
Ahmed Kathrada speaking at Nelson Mandela's funeral on Sunday. We're joined now by journalist David Goodman, author of the book Fault Lines, Journeys into the New South Africa, who was with Nelson Mandela, visited his final prison, and also went to Qunu, where President Mandela was finally laid to rest on Sunday. David also happens to be my brother. Welcome, David. Your thoughts today on Nelson Mandela's passing and where he was buried in Qunu.
Well, it's a remarkable journey, and it's been remarkable to see these images all week. I was in South Africa writing Fault Lines and covering Mandela and the Truth Commission back in 1996. And there's an interesting connection between his last prison that I visited with Mandela and Qunu, where he was buried yesterday. He modeled the home that he built in Qunu on his last cell, which was actually a little cottage on the grounds of what was then a maximum security prison, Victor Verster prison outside of Cape Town. Qunu was also in the heart of a former apartheid Bantustan or homeland called the Transkei, which when I was in South Africa at the height of apartheid in the 80s had actually been declared an independent country by South Africa, populated only by Black South Africans. It was a way of dispossessing Blacks of citizenship in their home country. And it had all the trappings of a country. I had to pass through border posts, have my passport stamped, and there was a Transkei Defense Force. And this so-called independent homeland, which no one recognized except South Africa, actually existed until Mandela became president in 1994.
Talk about that visit you made to Victor Verster prison, how you ended up there with Nelson Mandela.
I received a phone call one day in 1996 when I was in South Africa and covering the Truth Commission in Mandela, and it was from President Mandela's press aide asking me if I would like to go to jail with Nelson Mandela. I was a little stunned by the question, and it took me a second to figure out what was going on. And she was inviting me to return with Mandela to the last of 3 prisons that he spent 27 years in prison, as we know. The last 2 years were in Victor Verster prison. So I, of course, jumped at the chance and with that afternoon found myself on the grounds of this prison looking for his cell, which turned out to be this pleasant little cottage surrounded by rose bushes. President Mandela showed up, walked through a little rose garden, immediately broke into a big smile, and he said, some of the best years of my life were spent here. And I looked at him. There were just about a half dozen or 8 reporters, and I said, I mean, this was a very odd thing for a prisoner to say about his prison. And I asked him why. And he said, it was because this is where we met with the leadership of the ANC for the very first time. So it was, Mandela was released from jail in 1990. So for the last year or two, the leaders of the ANC, who he had not seen, this was the modern leadership, was coming to this prison to meet with him. I then asked President Mandela if he ever considered escaping. It would have been very easy. His jailer, who was also his cook, was actually taking him home to his apartment for home-cooked meals and to drive around covertly Cape Town. And so Mandela replied to me, no, he never considered escaping. He said it would have been contrary to what we were trying to achieve. And what was going on at that time in South Africa is that Mandela was a prisoner, but he was holding the white apartheid government hostage, because as long as he was in prison, the apartheid regime were pariahs on the international stage. So it was a remarkable dance or wrestling match that they were locked in. And then to finish that day, to finish that day, he then was with his former prison guards and thanked them and said it was because of them and sort of recognizing one another's common humanity that he was able to do the kind of political reconciliation for which he is now rightly world famous for.
David, thanks so much for joining us. David Goodman, author of the book Fault Lines, Journeys into the New South Africa. We'll link to your articles. I'm Amy Goodman. Thanks so much for watching this report from Democracy Now!, your daily independent global grassroots news hour. We don't accept advertising or corporate funding, but rather rely on donations from viewers like you. Please make your contribution by visiting democracynow.org today. We need your support today to keep bringing you this hard-hitting, in-depth reporting.